Hello and welcome back to Copic in the Craft Room. You are joining me kind of mid-stamp here. We started last week this art impression stamp with these 4 gals on a bike. And another request I had was doing some real-time coloring or slowing down the coloring. So we're doing actual real-time coloring. So the video of coloring itself will only be somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. We got the face or all the skin tones done in the first video. The actual coloring was about 14 minutes long. We're gonna attack the next chunk today. So starting with some hair and then going on as long as we can. And then we'll see if we need to finish up in a third video or if I do this last part and fast forward. We'll kind of make decisions as we go. So off to some coloring. So we are going to start on the hair, and I'm starting with kind of my front and center lady again with a Y00, so a really light yellow. I'm doing this kind of a bleached blonde type hair color, and honestly I don't even know what I was thinking when I started this. I think I thought she had a hat on because the person behind her has a hat, and I started flicking and then I realized that whole piece is hair. So I had to come back and add that Y00 in from the top of her scalp, flicking down. I'm already leaving a white area, but I'm using long, thin flicks right up on the tip of that brush nib. And then the second color I used in both areas was a Y21. Again, you can see me starting from the part and flicking downward with the curve of her head and then flicking from the bottom edge upward. And that leaves that highlight in the middle. And I did that in all those sections by using that real fine tip of that brush nib. So you see that texture of her hair, and I like to see that texture, so I leave a lot of that there. I'm using the Y00 to come back right around. I do one light pass over the top again to soften some of that, but I'm not trying to blend it. I'm still trying to see the texture, but that just softens those edges just a little bit. On the second gal, the gal right on the back of the bike, I'm starting with a YR31. This is one of my favorite bases for hair color. I just love the yellow-red base under a lot of brunettes, a lot of blondes, and even redheads. I think it's a great color to start with. So YR31, and I did that in some flicking kind of curly motions, thinking this hair looks like it's got some curl to it. And then Y23 is next. It's a little bit more golden, obviously, just being a yellow. Again, I'm going in with small squiggles at this point, some dots. The only place where I did some flicks is right underneath that bottom kind of swoop up off her face, and the rest is all squiggles and dots. And then I did add one more color to this to add some more dimension. It felt still pretty flat. So YR24 is the next color I brought in, and this one you can see even more clearly where I'm adding those dots and little squiggles just to add the texture to that hair. And I'm trying to give it the appearance of curly hair that she's had done up, and that is how I do that. I'm going to come back to my lightest color, that YR31, and I'm going to soften that. So I barely just kind of dab over that color to soften some of those dots so it doesn't look quite as polka dotty. So then I'm going to select some colors for the gal on the kind of standing, and she's going to go for a darker brunette back here. She's got E33 to start as a base color, and I'm just kind of circling that in. I don't need real heavy. It doesn't even need to be even. And I'm putting in that hole in the baseball cap too, assuming that that's probably where we're going to see some hair. Again, working with a little bit of a squiggle with an E35. Darkening up that little front patch, and I do come in with one more color on her hair as well. I've got an E37, even though you can't see the cap, and again working at the bottom edge with a few dots, a couple little tiny squiggles just to darken up and give some contrast to that hair color. one group left, our friend on the front of the bike, and I'm going to base her hair with an E43, and this time I'm truly basing it. So I'm not concerned about the direction of the hair yet. I'm not concerned about if it's curly or straight. I'm really just coming in and basing that. So I'm using some circular strokes and getting those edges nice and clean, because I am going to go a little darker with this hair color. The next color I'm using is an E44. It looks like it comes kind of straight back, and then I'm assuming it's a pretty curly hair. So I'm using dots kind of from the bottom of each of those sections up. The next color is going to be E47. Again, this time I'm working mostly in dots along the bottom edge of each of those three sections that are kind of swooping back. And then I'll add just a couple little flicks from that front edge to really emphasize that wind kind of rushing through her hair. And then I'm adding some C9. I want this to look almost black, but not quite. And so I'm adding that C9, the cool gray, to cool that color down, since it's an earth tone, just to really darken that, kind of add that deeper contrast, a little bit more realistic hair color. Next, I'm going to soften some of that up with an E44. Again, really just dabbing that color very lightly. I'm not trying to blend these colors together. And this got pretty dark, and so it's easier to see in real life, and I apologize for that. But my goal is just to soften some of those areas. So I've got all their hair done, and I have a little bit of time left before I feel like I need to cut off the coloring. So I add some lip color with E09 to the lady on the front, because she needs a little lip color. She's got some good lips going. That's another one of my favorite lip colors, especially if they've got a dark lipstick on or darker skin tones. And then I'm going to start on one of the shirts. And I won't do a lot of this. Oh, one more lip color, sorry. E04, just a touch on those lips. On the back, those needed a little bit of color. And a little colorless blender to do some repair work. I got into some of the eyes. Art Impressions, it is hard to stay out of those eyes. The faces are so small, and the eyes aren't completely closed, in that you don't have that black line going all the way around, and so it is hard to stay out of the whites of the eye. So BG13 is next, and I'm going to actually color her entire shirt this color. Haven't used this marker in a while, so it could use a little love. It needs a little bit of refilling. You can kind of see that as I'm coloring, the nib kind of turns white. It also isn't saturating the paper really well from the start, so you can tell it's a little bit lacking on ink, but it is going to get us there and fill that whole area in, slowing down as I get to edges, but using those small circular strokes. Most of those areas I need to go over at least 2 or 3 times to get that even coverage. Remember, you can always flip your paper over to the back if you're concerned with how much ink if you're getting enough ink on the page. If it's not real even showing through on the back of your paper, chances are you're not getting quite enough ink on your page, or you could be adding more, especially with like the blue greens and a lot of the blues. A lot of that, you'll see kind of a nice even coat even on the back of the page. So then I'm going to add some shading on here with a BG15. Sorry, I'm coming back to do some repair work YR with 4 zeros. That's the skin tone that I used on this particular figure, so I'm pushing some of that color back off that I got from the shirt kind of bleeding on. I have to do that a couple times. Now the BG15, starting from the back. Remember, our light source is coming from the front of these three ladies facing forward. They're riding towards the light source and facing that direction, at least most of them. So we want to keep that consistent. Bottom edge of the sleeve, back of the arm, back all the way down her back, a little bit under the arm, and along that bottom edge of the shirt where that fold is. I'm going to come in underneath the arm just a little bit and underneath her chest, because she's obviously got a little bit of a chest there, so we're going to round that out just a little bit for her. I'm going to go over that area a second time. The BG15 is not a super big difference, and so I wanted to darken that up a little bit by going over it a second time. BG13 to smooth that out, real light touch here because I don't want to darken up those light areas a whole lot. So I'm keeping it really light, just trying to get those transitions so it smooths out the color from one into the next. This will be very subtle shading. Those two colors are pretty close together. I am going to come back with the YR with 4 zeros. I've got a little area at her wrist that I need to push that color back because I got a little bit off the cuff onto her arm. And then I'm going to do her shoes to match her shirt. So I'm going to do the BG15, just to touch on the tip of those little shoes. And I'm just using the tip of the brush nib. You could open up the chisel nib if that's easier for you, have a little more control. And just to touch a color up on that earring as well. So that is about 13 more minutes of coloring. I got the hair done and I got the shirt, kind of some of the accessories done on this first gal. I'm going to finish this up in one more video, and I might have to speed it up just a touch, but that'll finish up this image. I hope this has been helpful, that seeing some of this done in real time gives you a sense of how long I'm spending in reality on these images as I put them together for you. Thank you for joining me this week here at Copic and the Craft Room on YouTube. If you have enjoyed and learned a thing or two, I'd appreciate if you would like our channel and follow us here, and also check us out over on Facebook. We have lots of Copic inspiration going on over there as well. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope you have a happy, colorful week.